They made him stand in front of the entire school gym because he couldn't pay $50. Whispers filled the air, eyes turned cold, and humiliation pressed down on him like a weight. What no one knew was that the man they were mocking had already given more to this school than anyone else in the room. And before the night was over, the truth would silence them all. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The gym smelled of polish and paper cups of orange juice. Balloons floated against the high ceiling, tied to the ends of the bleachers that creaked under the weight of winter coats. Voices carried and echoed, neighbors shifting and whispering while waiting for the annual winter assembly to begin. In the middle of the crowd sat Daniel Cross, a single father in worn work boots, trying to stay small in a room that never seemed to forget who he was. Beside him, his son Liam held the folded program tightly, the way children hold something they fear might slip away. Liam had braided his hair crooked that morning, and Daniel had let it be. He had never been good at fixing small things like that, but he tried to show his boy that imperfection could still be proud. The microphone screeched once before Mrs. Carter, the principal, stepped forward with a polished smile. Her pearls caught the gym's bright light as she spoke about tradition, community, and contributions. Her words rolled smoothly, but her eyes scanned a list in her hands. Then came the moment. "Daniel Cross," she called out, voice carrying over the crowd. "We still have an outstanding balance of $50. Please step forward so we can sort it now." The room shifted. Whispers spread quickly, the kind that feel like sharp wind against the skin. A father in a tailored jacket leans toward another parent, muttering, then pretending to cough. A few mothers exchanged looks that landed heavy. Daniel felt every eye pressing on him. It wasn't the first time, but humiliation has a way of finding fresh places to sting. He kept his shoulders square and rose slowly, Liam's hand slipping from his sleeve as if afraid his father might not come back. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Inside were crumpled bills and coins gathered from long nights sanding wood and taking extra shifts. Each step to the table echoed like a hammer strike in the quieting gym. Mrs. Carter extended her hand, her smile unshaken, her fingers touching the money as if it might leave a mark. "Thank you, Mr. Cross. Next month, let's try to be timely." The words stung more than the debt. She placed the coins neatly as if arranging proof, and her smile returned to the crowd. Daniel nodded once. There was no answer worth giving. Liam watched from the bleachers, eyes wide, his small shoulders tight. He had always thought his father was the strongest person he knew. But strength looked different under bright lights and curious eyes. The assembly continued, but the air had changed. Daniel walked back, each step heavy, and sat beside his son. Liam leaned against him without speaking, pressing close the way a child anchors someone they love. In his silence, Daniel's thoughts spun. $50. $50 meant skipped meals, late electricity, and nights of deciding what could wait. It meant saving coins in jars and trading hours of labor for the smallest bit of security. But here, under the sharp light of the gym, it meant public shame. Yet Daniel did not let his anger spill. He had learned that anger, once loose, only took more from him than the debt ever could. He tucked his hands into his sleeves, knuckles rough and scarred from work, and kept still. The choir began lining up in navy sweaters, the hum of lights above filling the pauses between words. Daniel sat unmoving, only shifting when Liam's head pressed harder into his arm. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't. Liam had a solo tonight, a single clear line he had practiced every evening on their porch. Daniel had told him It sounded like morning breaking through the dark. No humiliation would make him walk away before hearing that. Around him, the gym filled with chatter, but inside, Daniel built a quiet wall. He had stood in hospitals and courtrooms, faced bills and losses that bent him close to breaking. This, he told himself, would pass. The whispers, the pitying glances, the polished smile that cut him down. They were small compared to the reason he stayed seated. Because his boy would sing. And when Liam sang, even shame had to be quiet. Daniel sat back down after paying the $50, his steps still echoing in his mind. The coins and bills were gone, but the weight of the whispers stayed. Liam pressed his small shoulder against his father's arm, saying nothing, but in that quiet touch was a message stronger than words. The assembly carried on. Mrs. Carter spoke of school pride, of tradition, of the generosity of parents who gave more than expected. Each word sharpened Daniel's sense of being set apart. He could feel the sideways glances, the small smirks from those who had never known what it meant to count coins at midnight. But Daniel kept still. Years of hardship had taught him that silence could be stronger than argument. He looked down at Liam, who held the program as if it were a lifeline. His son's jaw was tight, his little hands clutching so hard that the paper bent. Daniel reached over and eased Liam's grip, folding the edge smooth again. "We'll stay," Daniel whispered, his voice steady. "You've worked too hard for this." Liam nodded, though his eyes glistened. To anyone else, it might have looked like a father reassuring his child. But in truth, it was Liam's determination that kept Daniel rooted. Every night for weeks, while Daniel sanded planks of wood in the small shed behind their house, Liam had practiced his solo. His voice rose above the hum of tools and the scent of sawdust. It was fragile at first, but it grew steady, like the beam of light that broke the dawn. Daniel had listened with pride, telling his son, "That sounds like morning itself." He could not let his son think shame was bigger than courage. As the choir began lining up, Daniel remembered the road that had brought them here. He thought of the long nights working odd jobs after losing his wife, of the small carpentry projects he took on, fixing fences, building shelves, sanding benches until his hands ached. He thought of selling an old canoe he never finished, just to cover school supplies. Every choice he made circled back to one reason: Liam's future. The memories pressed against him like heavy stone, but within them was his strength. He had faced grief when his wife passed, nights where silence filled the house too loudly. He had faced bills that stacked higher than his hope. He had faced the quiet judgment of neighbors who believed he should not try alone. And yet here he sat, still standing tall for his boy. The gym grew warmer with the crowd, coats and scarves pressed close. The hum of lights overhead seemed louder than before. But Daniel focused only on Liam. The boy adjusted his collar, preparing for his part. He straightened his back in a way that mirrored his father. The motion wasn't taught, it was inherited, born from watching Daniel hold his ground through storms. Daniel smiled faintly, pride mixing with sorrow. In Liam, he saw the reflection of resilience. Mrs. Carter continued speaking, her tone proud, her words polished, but Daniel's attention drifted. He thought about how strength did not always show itself in grand gestures. Sometimes it lived in the decision to stay seated when you wanted to run. Sometimes it lived in a child's hand clutching yours after humiliation. Sometimes it lived in the quiet promise that you would not let shame take away the one thing that mattered: love. When Liam's class was finally called, Daniel leaned forward, his heart beating harder than before. Liam spotted him from across the gym and took a sharp breath. Daniel saw it, the quick recognition, the silent exchange of courage between father and son. Liam squared his shoulders and joined the line, his steps small but firm. The music began. The children sang, voices weaving together in harmony. Daniel waited for the moment when Liam would step forward. He remembered every night on the porch, the way Liam's voice trembled at first, and then found its footing. When the moment came, Daniel watched as Liam lifted his chin, opened his mouth, and let the note ring out. It was small, but it was sure. The gym leaned toward the sound, as if pulled closer by the courage of one child's voice. Daniel felt the weight of the evening shift, the shame of coins, the whispers, the polished smile of Mrs. Carter. None of it mattered now, because Liam was singing. And in that voice, Daniel heard not only music, but proof that his hidden strength had passed on. The applause came, polite at first, then warmer. Daniel clapped, his hands rough, his chest. Am looked at him once more, and the bond between them deepened. Humiliation had tried to take the evening, but courage, quiet and steady, had claimed it back. The choir finished their song, and the applause echoed across the gym. Liam smiled shyly as he returned to his place, his eyes searching for his father. Daniel clapped harder than anyone, his rough hands making a sound that carried across the room. The shame of earlier still lingered like a shadow, but Liam's performance had already pushed some of the weight away. Then the principal, Mr. Thomas, stepped to the microphone. His voice cracked slightly under the hum of the speakers. "Before we close tonight's program," he said, "we have two surprises to share." The crowd leaned in, curious. "First," Mr. Thomas continued, "we want to honor a beloved teacher who passed this year, Miss Harper. Our community has created a memorial bench in her name, placed at the front of the school." Students pulled a sheet away to reveal a long wooden bench. The grain shone golden under the lights, its edges rounded smooth, the kind of work that came from patient, careful hands. The crowd murmured with appreciation, the kind of soft sigh that happens when something feels right. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew that bench. He knew the way the wood curved and how the joints fit together. He had shaped every inch of it during long nights when most of the town was asleep. But he stayed quiet. He had asked for anonymity. Mr. Thomas raised his hand. "And second, we want to reveal the restoration of our auditorium seats and the new reading nooks for our younger students. This work has transformed our school, and tonight, we thank the person responsible." Gasps spread across the room as a foam board was wheeled forward. It displayed photos of the auditorium before and after. Torn, cracked seats replaced with smooth, polished wood, small reading corners built with care, warm and inviting. "We thought the work came from a company donation," Mr. Thomas explained. "But this week, while reviewing invoices, we discovered something unusual. The work was done at cost, with no charge for labor. The benefactor left no company name, only initials burned into the wood." He turned the board. A photo showed the underside of one seat bracket. There, in plain, neat letters, was the name burned into the grain, Daniel Cross. The gym went silent, the kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. Mothers who had looked down on him lowered their eyes. The father in the tailored coat shifted in his seat, suddenly interested in the floor. The whisper stopped, and in their place was something different, realization. Liam gasped softly, tugging at his father's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered, his voice filled with awe, "that's you." Daniel swallowed, heat rising in his face. He had never wanted this. He had asked for quiet because he wanted Liam to just be another child at school, not the son of the man who gave more than he could afford. But the truth was now standing in the open, bigger than him. The principal continued, his tone more solemn now. "Mr. Cross did this work with his own hands. He gave his time, his craft, and his care so that every student here would have a better place to learn. He asked for no recognition, only that the children have what they deserved." Applause did not come immediately. Instead, the crowd sat stunned. The silence stretched, and in it, Liam gripped his father's hand tightly, as if proud enough for both of them. Daniel kept his eyes forward, trying to steady his breath. He thought of the nights spent in the workshop, the smell of sawdust in his hair, the ache in his arms after hours of sanding and lifting. He thought of the canoe he had sold just to buy the lumber, and he thought of Liam practicing his song while he worked. Those nights had been about sacrifice, about building something that mattered, never about this moment, never about a spotlight. But now, the whole room knew. Someone in the back started clapping, not polite, not hesitant, but strong. Then another joined, then another. Soon the sound filled the gym, rolling forward like a wave. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him. It wasn't about him. It was about what hands could build, about what quiet determination could give. And in that moment, the humiliation of being called out for $50 was washed away by the truth that had finally been seen. The gym had discovered what real strength looked like. The applause rolled across the gym like thunder. Not the kind that frightens, but the kind that shakes something awake inside a person. Daniel Cross sat frozen for a moment, unsure what to do with the sudden roar of voices and hands. His name, carved quietly into the underside of wood, had now been spoken aloud to everyone. Mr. Thomas stepped forward again, lowering the microphone. His voice softened. "Mr. Cross, would you join us at the front?" Daniel shook his head at first, his instinct to remain invisible. He had asked for silence, not a stage. But Liam tugged at his sleeve, his small eyes wide with pride. "Please, Dad," he whispered, "they need to see you." And so Daniel stood. His walk to the front felt longer than any job site he had worked. The gym, filled with neighbors and strangers, seemed to hold its breath. When he reached the stage, Mr. Thomas took his hand in both of his, holding it firmly. "We've given this school more than money could ever buy," he said. "You've built corners where children can read, benches where they can rest, and a place where they can belong. Tonight, we thank you." Daniel nodded, his voice low but steady. "I only wanted the children to have something better. I never wanted my son to feel different." The words cut through the gym like a quiet truth no one could argue with. Mrs. Carter, the principal who had called his name for the unpaid balance, stepped forward. Her polished smile was gone, replaced by a tremble in her voice. On behalf of the school and the parents, she began. But Daniel lifted a hand gently, stopping her. "It's all right," he said. "What matters is that the kids have what they need. That's enough." He did not say that the earlier humiliation had scraped like grit under a bandage. Art. He did not say that $50 had meant choosing between the power bill and a treat for his boy. He did not say how hard the long nights had been. He chose dignity instead of bitterness. Then, from the back, a sound began. Not the polite clap of obligation, but the deep, rolling rhythm of real applause. Jason, the school custodian, slapped his hands together like drums. Teachers joined, then parents, then students, until the entire gym stood on its feet. The sound grew so loud, it seemed the roof itself might lift. Liam stared at his father with shining eyes. "You didn't just build benches," he whispered. "You built respect." Daniel swallowed hard, his hand resting gently on his son's shoulder. In that moment, he knew that the real work of his life was not wood or nails, but the lessons Liam would carry. When the clapping slowed, Mrs. Hadley, the treasurer, stepped to the microphone. Her voice was clear. "From this day forward, we will never again call a parent to the front for unpaid balances. No family will ever be shamed for what they cannot give. That ends tonight." The gym fell quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with understanding. People began to see Daniel differently. The father in the tailored coat, who had once mocked him, now looked ashamed. Mothers who had exchanged pitying glances avoided his eyes. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Liam's small hand slipping into his father's, proud and sure. After the program ended, many families left, but Daniel and Liam stayed. Jason rolled up mats at the side of the gym, and Daniel, almost without thinking, walked to the memorial bench he had built. He smoothed his palm over the grain, feeling the quiet strength of his own work. Mr. Thomas joined him, tie loosened, no microphone in hand. He sat on the bench as if testing not the wood, but the message behind it. "This," he said softly, "is what really builds a school. Not money, not raffles, but hands and hearts like yours." Daniel said nothing. He was not a man who collected praise. He let the words be what they were. Soon, Mrs. Carter approached with 2 paper cups of orange juice. She held one out to him with both hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "We forgot what truly matters." Daniel accepted the cup. "We're all just trying," he said. "Some days we get it wrong, but some days we see it clear." On the way out, Liam paused at the carved letters on the bench. He traced them with his fingers, reading the simple line beneath. "For anyone who needs a place to rest." He looked up at his father. "You didn't just make a bench," he whispered. "You gave everyone here a place to stand tall." Daniel smiled, a quiet pride warming his face. For once, he did not feel small. That night, the gym learned a lesson no microphone could teach. Money speaks loudly, but work speaks plainly. Shame can be given, but it can also be unlearned. And dignity, once revealed, can silence even the harshest voices. This story reminds us that dignity cannot be bought, and real strength is shown in quiet acts of love. If this touched your heart, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who needs hope today.